Hello and welcome to Warblog. New super duper audible audio in theory. Gonna make it quite short just in case there's no recording. Gonna be looking at this, which is a follow-on from this. So this is Ruhengeri and Byumba, and this is just Byumba. Now, if you recall, the screenshot's a bit odd there, we determined that the Rwandan Patriotic Front probably held Gatuma there. In all honesty, they probably had a line a lot nearer that, but for this game, sufficed putting it there to sort of reflect that obviously the stage between there and there. But because this was sort of more in line with the other place, I wonder how I can. Oh my. I sort of know. See, the thing is, how do I do the back button? So let's try numbers lock. That sort of does it. So what I was saying is that was part of Byumba, but also included Ruhengeri. Now we've done a scenario for Ruhengeri down here from 1991 when they entered Ruhengeri, and I don't think they took it. I think they captured it briefly and then left. What does it actually say? Yeah, so they took it, they captured it, but then they withdrew basically and the following day the Rwandan troops re-entered it, but they continued to attack it sort of every night. So presumably they didn't feel they could hold it from the full Rwandan government forces, etc. So that's sort of what happened there. So they took it and then withdrew. And that was in 91. So this is in 93. And so instead of just playing that one as it was, we sort of moved that front line between Gatuma and Byumba a little more down there. But there was actually a demilitarized zone, which is sort of like this section here, and here is Ruhengeri. Now, I actually really like this map. I do, but the one thing that I will say about it is that again it's a little flawed, because essentially what really happens in this part of the war is that they move down here, they take Ruhengeri, they take Byumba, but they also move a lot further south, so much so that they get 30 kilometers. So we're going to have to really sort of look at the wars section, the Rwandan Civil War down here at this one. They basically get to within 30 kilometers of Kigali. So, for example, they might have actually got as far as Tumba. So I can't quite, maybe I should put Cyanica in there as well, or maybe they already held that. But basically, they sort of get a little bit further, so we don't really know. So essentially, to sort of play it possibly maybe to a fuller extent. That's not what we want to do. To play it maybe to a fuller extent, what I did think about doing was sorry, Happy is on the other side there. Anyway, was to maybe put this as an objective, Tumba as an objective, and Kinyami as an objective. So basically, you've got to just come south through the map. Now, because these are only the only two named objectives, I've left it at that, and I left it at that. But basically, I would almost suggest that you sort of, you try to capture these 4 primary road points. I mean, this one's 2 roads, but they're pretty much the same thing. So you could take that, that, and that, for success. But the only thing to bear in mind is that the Rwandan Patriotic Front, they advance quite extensively and quickly and rapidly, and the Rwandan government forces sort of fall away for reasons mentioned earlier. But basically, they're demoralised, they're not being paid, etc., etc., and a few other reasons. But it's not like the early part of the war where they put up quite a resistance. That they basically fell away quite quickly. But the French enter. So what you've got down here is obviously a lot of Rwandan patriotic units, and then you've got the Rwandan government. But then you get the French in, and it does mention that the problem was that the Rwandan Patriotic Front then had to start advancing under the artillery of the French, who came in. So they come in on turn 5 with their artillery. And considering the amount of rockets and things that they actually have, and they do have, I think there's 1, 2, I think there's 1 more up here, 2 more up here, so they've got 4, but their rockets are only range of 4, 316, whereas this artillery, well, it's 313, so it's not even as good. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they've got 1 more extra artillery piece, but they've got to go through that. So if the Rwandan government can sort of somehow erode their artillery capability or their rocket capability, which if they play their cards right, they won't be able to. That will give the Rwandan government sort of a bit more of an edge. But once they get their artillery on, I thought it would be more of an advantage, but maybe not so. But it will definitely be harder going. But plus, then there's all these French units to sort of deal with as well. So, because I haven't played it through, I don't know how it's going to work. But what I'm guessing is that it'll be quite easy going to start off with, and then in theory it will become a little harder. So, as I said, these are the 2 sort of main objectives. But I would suggest basically trying to clear these 4 roads for success or for victory, or to continue the game, because I think obviously you're going to take that almost straight away, and to be honest, you probably take Ruhengeri straight away. Now I have put little tougher forces in there, 3s, etc., etc. But the Rwandan Patriotic Front don't really have a huge sort of army. A lot of it is irregular, so once the Rwandan government get their main forces on, they could find it quite tough going forward. But they do have some heavy units, which are sort of again more geared in towards coming on towards the later on in the game. Well, there, so well these come on sort of straight away. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. I think it's quite interesting, mainly because of the map. The map's sort of quite interesting. Now, if you look at these 2 objectives, we've got this one here, obviously, and this one here we've just covered. So in theory, all you've got to do is come down this road, take that, and then just come down here and take that. But if you consider that, and then consider the broader objectives, there's basically 3 parts to this map, divided by these lakes, and to some extent by this road network. So there's 1 road network there, another one on the other side here, and down this road. But there's this big open gap here, coming down here, and you could almost drive, a lot of these forces straight down there. And if you were going for Kigali, you might do that as opposed to coming down this way and take this road, because it doesn't mention whether they took Sierra or Mugali, etc., etc. It doesn't mention which one of these places was significant and which ones were taken. But if you are going for that, you might want to sort of almost not bother with this road. You could almost go straight down here because there's not a lot there. So I'm going to just sort of jump into it. And what I'm going to do is just maybe the opening moves, I think, because I think we should be able to take Byumba in the first turn. So let me just maybe choose a thicker line. think I'm going to take that. I think I'm going to use a traditional approach and move this way, possibly spreading out like that with these units joining. So this sort of task group doing that. I think I'll commit this to sort of coming down this road. Now, I don't know how far they'll get, but by the time they get wherever they're going to get, they can now possibly alternatively opt to possibly split some kind of task force up in this way to support essentially what's left of this coming down this way in some kind of central shield, with this sort of trying to buffer there, etc, etc. So, you know, we can maybe push this one here to sort of to create that line here, but maybe more of a defensive line across here with two attacking forces here and here. So what I'm going to do first of all, I think, is just test the water and see how far I can get down this road. Now, one thing to just say at this stage, I haven't done this yet, and I think I'm going to do it at some point soon, maybe sooner than later. I don't know yet. 1.0, this is incredible really, because they can probably get into the combat straight away. Look at that. Basically, he's got movement left as well. These have got no movement left. So what I'm planning on doing is, when units only have 0 movement, they will become grayscaled. So you'll know that these units can't move because they'll actually be, you know, just exactly as they are, but greyed out. Now, for example, in this situation, this guy's got 0.6. That might not actually be enough. If this unit wasn't here, it might not be enough to move along the road or to do anything. So he wouldn't be greyed out, but he wouldn't be able to move because he, you know, for example, if he only had 0.1 movement left, he's still got some movement, so I wouldn't be able to do that. I can't sort of intuitively say you only do it when there isn't a move. It's only when it gets to 0. But because that does actually happen quite a lot, especially after combat, I think that might add things to the game, allowing people to see what units you know can move. We've got to remember the limits of this are all, you know, purely down to the limits of HTML and, you know, web-based graphics really. I've always got my eye out on things, and I was looking at, you know, some stuff on that just today. I was also looking at another thing. What's it called? It's called Phaser 3. But I'm going to be quite honest, it's rubbish. No, it's not quite rubbish. I wonder if I can maybe give you a little hint, maybe. Let's see. There. This is Phaser 3. And that's actually quite simple. I can sort of pretty much get my head around that. And do that. So that's sort of simple enough. And then I got as far as this. Or not. What is it? Little Okay, well, it should work. It worked earlier. Yeah. So you got some sort of. But the thing is, I looked at this and I thought, this all looks pretty good, but it's not actually. It's okay if you're doing what we just looked at there, something like that, where you've got a sort of hand-eye coordination, maybe you've got to avoid that thing, that sort of game. But when you're dealing with this, it all comes back to this. The code would be exactly the same. There's no magical way of changing how it all works, and basically it's just Java driven, so I'm not I don't think there's a lot of scope in that, but sorry about interrupting the game with that little insight. But what I was saying now, when I've got down to zero movement, like these units are, they can be greyed out. That's just something else. I've always got my eye open on certain things, and I think that will help, but I don't think phaser 3 is really up to much, which is a completely different kettle of fish. So we've done that. I'm not going to do the attacks yet, but what I'm going to do now, well, he can't get far through this scrub, so I'm going to move there. Don't really need the roads. Maybe the scrub should be a lot tougher. It is for armour. You can't get into the hills. The movement is quite terrifying, really. I think we're going to engage there. I'm going to adjust the scrub movement. It's too fast. So their movement is 0. So they would be greyed out, so we can see that. Let's see how far we can move through the scrub here. 1.5, 2, 3, 4. So, how much movement have they got left? Not a lot. Probably enough to get into another hex, so we might as well make that ground. So that's the situation after that movement. So let's see what we can do here. This is really the sort of the nitty gritty, because they're worth 3, but they're in a town, I think. So it's going to put them up a bit. So they're going to be worth about 4. So it's going to be probably about 3 to 1 odds. But I don't know whether there's defense for scrub. Let's see. I think it'll be about 3 to 1. Yep, and which isn't brilliant, but it's enough to get into Ruhengeri, but they have got no movement left to do that. Now down here, they can't really move, so it's going to be the same, but they might get up to a 4 to 1 because of the surround. Yep, and they push them back. But oh, and he's got some movement as well. So they could have taken both in one turn. Okay. And we're going to have an attack here, because this should be at least a 4 or 5 to 1. Pushes them back. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do one more turn. I don't want to spend too long on this because I'm not sure about the audio. I'm going to change the scrub movement though. I think that's too fast. And I think I'm going to give the Rwandan government a few more troops. I think these should be maybe at least just a tad more defendable. Right, we're here. What we're going to do is move back in. Okay. Okay, so we're starting to form sort of pressure lines now. So this is really where things are going to start to sway, because if we can get stacks over 5, these units won't have that extra power that they've got for being irregulars, and then they'll really be nothing other than quite weak units. Here we've lost Byumba, so taking it back is going to be a lot harder, but they've only got 3 in there. Moving across overland, we could probably get 1, 2, 3, 4, so we're not really going to be able to get there with those, but we might be able to get there with these. 1, 2, 3, possibly we could get into there with enough. Right, so what have they got? 3 movement. Okay. I'm going to move 1 this way. He's got full movement, so he'll be able to move in there, but we really want to move as much in there as possible if we win. Oh well. That was a mistake. So I wanted to send the others this way. Okay, so we're starting to form what I would almost describe as, let's try some white line. Bit of a line there, a bit of a line there, and a bit of a line there. And obviously we've left that sort of open, but I'm not sure whether there's any risk there, but in theory we should have sort of covered that. Which is sort of what I predicted. Be interesting to see what the odds stack up like here. Obviously we've sort of committed most of the Rwandan government forces here, here and here. Choose a different colour maybe for that, and go for that. Which is sort of fine, and that's facing blue will work, sort of facing that, and quite a big stack there. But the point is, it leaves these sort of two almost reserve units. Now that's artillery, so they probably don't count. But this unit could sway the balance here, but it could also sort of do other things. You know, so that's really quite a significant central reserve. I mean, if that wasn't there, you could almost say that these would be almost potentially quite balanced, in fact, in favour of the Rwandan government here. So let's see what these battles end up like. Well, we haven't positioned ourselves fully here, but we've got Ruhengeri back, and we've got enough to actually attack this stack here. But I think the first thing to do is to make it irregular proof. Okay, so we'll push them back comfortably. Maybe not the best of positions to put that infantry in. We've sort of committed ourselves there, and here. Can we take Byumba back? That was pretty interesting, actually. I didn't think it would be that tight. I just didn't really do the odds, but that is obviously but we can't get in there. I thought I'd left something, but obviously one is not enough. and clearly it is a track, but it's still not enough for this infantry unit to get into there. So the battle for Byumba is heated up. Maybe we should have... Well, this is armour, isn't it? Maybe we should have put some of this armour over there. See, this is the thing that I really quite keep wanting to stress about war games and war blog in particular. Is you've got to spend a bit of time thinking, and when you're doing a video you can't really do that. But what I should have done was actually identify that I had armour, and possibly identified that maybe I could send it over this way as well, or at least split it, because that is obviously, you know, obviously if this was a battle for Ruhengeri, as the previous one, I think we'd probably win. You know, if I put this as a little section here and just use these units, I think we're going to win. But the thing is, it doesn't make, you know, that's the thing. That's what makes war games, is the decisions that you make that send units in this direction. Because obviously we can't just push them down here. But you could almost say, you know, this is one of the things I like about this map in particular. But you could almost say, as long as we can, you know, the objective for these units will be to keep this line here, because then we could at least push our armour quickly down this road, using the road as logistics, and then up this way, or something like that. But, you know, I mean, the speed things are moving, this is a significant road. It gets a bit tight here, but if we can keep that line, we can maintain this road to our advantage, because we're going to sort of, I think we're up against it here. If we could have got into that town, it would have been quite nice. I think there's a track missing there. Well, I'm not going to go any further. It's been half an hour, and considering the state of the audio, I really don't want to just commit a massive long video on something that might not work. But I just like this map, you know. I was thinking, I mean, it doesn't take that long to do. It's just, you know, some maps are just more appealing. I mean, it's got this huge waterway in the middle with quite clear hills. It's quite hard to sort of see terrain types on Google Maps, which is what I use to base this on. But the thing is, I can always come back and edit maps. You know, if I discover that there's sort of the hills are more extensive, or it was brush here, but it was more swamp here, or agricultural here, you know, I can change that. But inherently, the map sort of falls into the sort of, you know, how it falls. And if you sort of look at, I mean, I did this, and it took me a while, but it didn't take me that long. I don't want to say it took a long time. But these series of maps, they all come from the same article, the Battle for Ghazni, Arjistan District, Faryab Province, and Jangal Ba. They all come from this New York Times post, this New York Times thing, talking about Afghan government forces lost more than 200 officers and soldiers in fighting over the past 3 days as Taliban insurgents launched sustained attacks on 4 different fronts. And it goes down to talk about them. You know, it talks about the city of Ghazni, and then 90 miles west of Ghazni province, Arjistan district, Faryab province, and then this one here, which is Jangal Ba. So that's how I got these 4 scenarios. But they're all quite simple and basic. You know, so it's not a case of sort of you know, just putting in lots of crappy things. I thought, well, I'll go for that. You know, there's 4 scenarios. I'll put them together. I mean, this one looks particularly unappealing in comparison, but you know, I was looking at on the Twitter account when I was looking these up, and the Ghazni thing is actually quite major. You know, there's sort of all stuff on Twitter about it, and there's quite a few maps, and they don't do anything other than show a picture of Afghanistan with a vague indication of where Ghazni is. You know, so this is actually, for what it is, and this is all part and parcel of what War Blog is all about. It's putting it together, you know, so you can see the shape of Arjistan district. there's no real features. The main feature is this sort of road that comes up here, these three towns. If you zoom in, it's a little more detailed, but basically that's it. There's nothing there, so it's not like that map we were just looking at. There's lots of interesting sort of things and roads and whatnot, but it's still, it's still significant. I mean, it's a real event. I mean, and the thing with this one that makes it actually quite interesting is that these special forces sort of end up routed. See, this is an interesting one. Basically, there are 100 soldiers in a fort in an army base, and they're assaulted on basically Saturday night, Sunday morning. The defenders said they did not expect to last another night. It sounds like a heroic struggle going on in one paragraph that's really not being covered anywhere else. This is the one we're looking at there, the Aragistan district. When they found out on Sunday, estimates of the dead ranged from 40 to 100. These are the elite army commando unit that had been defending the district disappeared for 2 days, and their superiors were uncertain of their fate. 22 survivors were carried to safety on donkeys by rescuers who found them lost in the mountains. I don't like to laugh, but there just seems sort of, it seems like there's a story there, and so you end up with information that's based on one paragraph, a map that really doesn't look like much, but then there's sort of this bizarre story of these special force units being found lost in the mountains on donkeys. And there's another article today that I read somewhere else that refers to the same thing and expands a little more on, that. And, it's just peculiar. So little thing has quite a lot of depth once you sort of get into it. And I think that's, what I'm trying to achieve. But I'm just sort of mentioning that because otherwise the map does look a bit bland. You might say, oh gosh, I don't want to play that. It's sort of, I get the feeling that it might be easy to think that I'm just plonking anything out, no matter how irrelevant. And I do have some sort of general guidelines. Basically, there has to be some sort of significant sort of event, but generally loss of life. If 20 people die or more, then as sad as it sounds, it becomes quite significant. For example, there's some recent who is it, the SDF, these Kurdish units amassing sort of northwest of Aleppo at the moment. They've been involved in some operations, but their operations are not significant enough. I think they've blown up a car and assassinated one of the opposing militant leaders. They've assassinated him, and it was sort of like, well, there's 3 operations going on there, but they were just these small things that probably didn't involve more than a carload of their sort of covert special forces working behind the lines. But this is actually quite significant. So I just lost this Aragistan district to the Taliban, which was protected by about 200 special operations commandos who apparently managed to have escaped, with quite a few of them dying presumably, but managed to escape on donkeys into the mountains. I did think about where to put the donkeys, where to put the mountains, but when you look at that, it's sort of, all I'm really just doing is just putting it into perspective with what you could maybe arguably say are interesting maps. And well, yeah, obviously this is more interesting. It's a lot larger scale, on a bigger battle on both sides. But none of it is unnoteworthy. When you consider exactly what it is, and that's sort of something that I'm always aware of at the forefront. These things they come and go. But they're probably they're things they're the source of legends, aren't they? I don't want to maybe put it quite like that, but I mean the people involved have been life-changing events, so they're not sort of nothing at all. But anyway, I'm sort of wandering along there. I'm just saying that some maps are not not as great, but the incidental details in the background and the significance and implications of what they are isn't any less significant. So I'm going to hopefully upload this, and I've been talking quite quietly because it's quite late. I don't want to speak too loudly, but I'm hoping that this new laptop I've got, and it's not perfect, of course, it's an old laptop, an i3 core, is going to actually allow me to actually start doing the videos as before Microsoft updates. Ironically and frustratingly enough, Microsoft just updated this computer moments before, but I'm suspecting and hoping that maybe they haven't targeted my audio again, which I do actually suspect they did. But this isn't an expensive laptop, so, and I do have now plans to buy an expensive laptop, but not until the end of the year. I don't want to just go out running out and buying these things. But on the other one, I've lost 4 keys. I can't use 4 keys on it, and so I solved it. I bought an external keyboard. Problem is, it's a blue chip, and it keeps losing blue chippiness, and the keyboard is actually quite crap itself. You press the space button, and quite often it puts 2 spaces in, and so I've got another keyboard, and I wired one, but I've got to wait for that. And so I've got a laptop with 3 keyboards, none of which work because one's still in the post. It's not really an ideal way to sort of run whatever I do, in that way really. My main laptop requiring an external keyboard for basic operation. That's not the idea with laptops. So I will be getting a new one. I do everything on a laptop because they're so portable and I travel a lot. But so that's sort of that really. Remember, if you think this is a fun game, and you think this looks interesting, you think, oh, hang on, I could do this or I could do that. You sign up, become a member, you can play it. Obviously, you can print and play as well, so you can play this on your tabletop against your cat. Also, you can play this against an opponent using IPs, so it's pretty versatile, and you might find it satisfies that which cannot be satisfied elsewhere. Okay, I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.